Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are gonna do the topic of a relative clause. In the previous video, we did the types of sentences and we learned that how we connect the independent and dependent clause by two ways. Either we can use a subordinate clause or either we can use a relative clause. So let's get started. So, what's a relative clause basically? Now, it's a piece of sentence which gives us extra information related to the previously mentioned sentence. So, like it's like joining two sentences, like conjunctions do. But now, what we are doing, we are not going to use a conjunction, but we are going to use a relative pronoun and we are going to put it in the commas. For example, we have a sentence over here that Lakshya was going to a fancy dress party. He was dressed as Batman. So now what our motive is that we need to join the second information into the first sentence because it's just adding. It's a dependent clause and the previous sentence will always be the independent clause because it doesn't need anything else. It will make sense. And always the extra information will be our dependent clause. That is, relative clause is also a type of dependent clause and it depends on the previous sentence which we have. Now, in this example, also, the second sentence adds some extra information about the noun in the first sentence. So, we can turn it into a relative clause like this. Now, Lakshay, who was dressed as Batman, was going to a fancy dress party. Now, the red highlighted part, which is who was dressed as Batman, this is known as relative clause. As this is extra, non essential information, we put the clause in commas. Now, what is the meaning by non essential? That there can be two types of information. One info can be essential, which is important for the sentence and crucial for a situation, and one information can be non essential. So, a relative clause almost and always starts with a relative pronoun because, of course, if we are not using conjunction, we are using relative pronoun over here. So, the clause will always start with the relative pronoun. So, other relative pronouns which we can use are that, who, whom, these, and which. Moving on. So, where to place it in a sentence? Like in the previous sentence, also, we placed it in the beginning. We mentioned the noun and then we put our relative clause in the middle and then we put the dependent clause or the additional or the previous sentence which was given. Now we have these three sentences over here. 25 Maple Street, which has been up for sale for years, is apparently haunted. A ghost whose name is Mr. Stone roams the corridors. The estate agent, who badly needs a sale, is frightened to show people around. Now, in all these three sentences, we have put the relative clause in the middle. So, they were all embedded inside the main clause. Now, what do we mean by main clause? The blue highlighted part. That 25 Maple Street is apparently haunted. This was our main clause, or you can call it independent clause, and the extra information, which is the dependent clause, was added into it. That's why they are called embedded relative clauses. However, relative clauses don't always have to be embedded. Now, if you ask why can't we use them only in this way? Because we can place them in other positions also. It's not necessary that we have to place them in the middle. We can put them in the starting or in the end of the sentence. For example, the children all did well in the spelling test, which made their teacher smile. Now, in this particular sentence, the children all did well in the spelling test. This is our main clause, correct? And which made their teacher smile? This is our relative clause. So, clearly, now we are not embedding it, we are just putting it at the end. So, this time the relative clause is after the main clause. We still need a comma before the relative clause as this is also extra non-essential information. So whenever the information is non-essential, we have to put a comma. But sometimes there is no need for comma. We will look at example for that as well. Now these are called non-restrictive. Now sometimes what happens, we are adding extra information, but it's really not necessary. The meaning would be clear even without that. For example, the book that I bought yesterday cost me $10. Now this extra information is not at all necessary. If we just say that the book cost me $10, that is also okay. We don't need to know when did the person buy it, correct? So that's why we don't have to use commas here, because it's a type of non-restrictive sentence where non-restrictive or non-essential information is there. Okay, so this time the information is in the extra clause is essential to the meaning of the sentence, so therefore we don't need to use commas. One more example: the distraught teacher threw the test paper that were full of mistakes up in the air. Now in this one, now the information is essential, but still we are not using a comma because we are using that over here. So there can be some tricky bits there. Sometimes we have to use a comma and sometimes we don't have to use, so that we have to really understand. Okay, I hope some clarity has achieved in the topic of relative clause. If you liked it, please drop a like and comment. If there's any query, you can post your doubts in the comment section as well. Thank you.